Hello YouTube, welcome back. I'm not on my farm again today. I've come to visit a special guest, a friend who helped introduce me to the industry, who fished my mower out of a bog and who's provided wonderful, valuable advice. His name is Nick Savage. Say hi, Nick.
Hi everyone.
Nick is a farmer himself, but he also runs a contracting company providing some services to a small mafia of macadamia farms. I think it's called Maca Farm Services.
That's it.
And you've been running that for how long?
Oh, about 3 or 4 years we've been doing some services for people, harvesting and some spraying and a bit of cleaning up.
Right. Now, I came to look at your farm for a couple of ulterior motives. One is to try and compare what you've got on for harvest to what I've got on for harvest, and what I'm seeing here is amazing, actually. It's I don't mind saying it's a whole lot better crop than what I've got on, but the varieties interest me because what's this one here?
You'd probably know more than me. I really don't know.
Because yeah, I mean, my farm's the same sort of thing. It's a there's a lot of these trees with narrow leaves, no spines, no serrations or anything like that, and a reasonable crop on. Some of them are big. Is this bigger than last year for you?
I think the fruit's bigger than last year. I don't think there's quite as much fruit, but I think that the weight will make up for the smaller number of actual nuts itself.
I'm hoping that's the case with me because I'm not seeing as many nuts, except in, funnily enough, the A16s, which is a tree I'd learnt to hate. Everyone had told me A16 was a terrible tree, and I still believe that. But this year it's sort of making a bit of a liar out of me. And but these are good height. Have you, walking along here, have you ever pruned these?
Yep, every couple of years.
What do you do to prune? Is it just one odd limb, not the leader?
Oh, you mean with a chainsaw? No, I've lifted them up, gotten everything out lower, but just go for it. Make some space, get the light back down to the ground, get the canopy going again.
Right.
Don't be too concerned about it.
But are you doing sort of brutal pruning like a lot of the tree, or you're just trying to keep it to 1 or 2 limbs a tree?
Yeah, just cleaning up to get access under the tree. And sorry, when
you mean
first
skirting?
asked, I thought you meant mechanical pruning.
Yeah.
Which we have done every couple of years.
That's hedging, you mean? Yeah.
And then he skirts with his hedger as well on an angle.
So is this only this gap we see between the rows, is that only there because of hedging? Would have the canopy closed over?
Probably not quite yet, but it's starting to in certain parts of the farm.
Yeah.
It's getting closer and closer every day.
But there's no issue with grass cover?
No, there's still good penetration, and that's selective limb removal from the main leading trunk.
Right.
It needs a bit more now, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, it looks like it does look like there's a good crop on.
Well, we've never used any herbicide here in 6 years in an effort to maintain the ground cover, so...
It's great. Is it smother grass? Yeah. What are we looking at?
Amongst predominantly smother grass with lots of other bits and pieces throughout.
Is that smother grass?
Well, that's...
Or is that something else?
This one's the smother grass.
Right.
The thinner leaf stuff, this one.
Very thin blade.
Yeah.
Right, I've got some of that on my farm, but I think it's almost accidental. I've got so much mess, and farmers' friends seem to be the dominant species.
As long as you've got something there.
Oh, I know about farmers' friends, yeah. Did you know farmers' friends are an Australian native?
Are they?
Yep. Which makes them a traitor to their country. But,
there's a lot of people now planting cover crops.
Yeah, well, I'm doing clover.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so,
I'm doing...
So you were doing a white clover?
I'm doing a white clover, and I'm doing pinto peanut.
Yeah.
Which I've got some. I need to do some more because you plant it in the warmer months for that.
So there's a couple of mixes with purple basil to encourage bees to come back into your orchard.
Right.
And radishes to just break the ground up and get more moisture back into the ground and carbon into the ground.
Is this what that crowd McGregor Goulet they're doing there as part of their regenerative farming thing?
And they'll lend you a direct drill to put it all in as well.
Yeah. Now, you said that you had a row of dadau trees down here, which I'm keen to look at because, you know, the breeding program that's been going on since the early 90s, I think, they were crossing everything with everything else.
Sorry, you go, keep going.
No, that's okay. They were crossing everything with everything else to try and make some decent varieties that would crop within a few years of planting, had a reasonable habit as a tree, and all of these new varieties, well, nearly all of them, have 246 in their bloodline.
Yeah.
Because it's a spreading tree, heavy cropper, pretty reliable, and even in Hawaii they were using 246 to generate all these varieties. But these latest ones, variety G and variety R, have Dadao as one of their parents. So G is Dadao times Dadao cross 246, and R is Dadao cross 842. And because almost no one grows this,
No, they're not very common.
but it's an old hardy variety. Has it done well for you?
No, I wouldn't say it's fantastic, but there are certain years that it's done better than others. Last year it did quite well, but then everything did quite well last year.
Okay. Does it do well in a bad year?
I don't know, I don't think it's a great tree, to be perfectly honest, but then I do remember 7-8 years ago when looking at farms, seeing a farm that had a whole lot of Dadao, and they were absolutely loaded with nut that year.
They're meant to be heavy croppers, but they get some stick tight
Yeah, well, everything's got stick tight
these
at the
days.
moment, yeah.
Right. And there's, okay, well, it's a decent sized nut. There's nothing wrong with it. And there's some load on. It's hard to
Yeah, they've got a reasonable
see.
nut set on there.
Are these trees in their teens, or what do you get?
Oh,
What's your best guess?
They'd be 20 years old at least.
Right. So it's not an overly large,
No.
unless you prune them
They're
all.
a shorter, bushier tree.
Right. Is this a problem for spray, or does the spray get through it all right?
No, gets through, no problem.
Right.
Yeah, the penetration's fine.
Okay. Well, this is the supposed model parent for a couple of these new varieties, and I'm looking at both G and R as sort of candidates for gap fillers in my orchard. I've put in some 246s. I don't want to have anything to do with the 344 anymore because I've got too many of the bloody things. But as far as you know, what are the varieties you've got?
741s and a whole lot of A38 around the house.
Right.
Some 246. But as I say, they're mixed with pollinators all through the orchard.
Right.
Which is a little bit of a pain.
And you're an A38 fan too, aren't you?
I like the A38. The A38's a good tree.
Yeah. Heavy because of its heavy crop?
Yeah, good prices. Crops well. Is a good shape to combine in being a tall, thin tree. You could combine with a fat, stout tree and get good use of space on your farm.
Right.
So if you were replanting in amongst a row with narrow rows, it's only going to grow up tall and thin as opposed to taking up heaps of space.
We might take a look at them in a minute, but you've also got a very rare A268. Are we nearby?
We'll
have to go have a look.
Yeah. Look at the flower.
Out of season flower.
Yeah.
On the Dadao?
Yep.
Is it only on the Dadao or is it on
I
others?
haven't seen any others anywhere else.
I've not. That's the one thing I've not got at the moment, but it's not great, is it?
Not ideal.
Helps keep lacebug alive or something. Now, you've said to me before you never mulch. You've never mulched this orchard? With a mulcher?
After I've hedged, I've mulched, but
Right.
as a yearly clean-up thing, no, we just sweep with a little harvester and pick up all the crap on the ground and burn it.
Okay, and then you mow
And then you mow
repeatedly.
really low.
So presumably you don't have the kind of rocks in your orchard that I've got in mine.
No, there's no rocks in this place.
Did you have to do some rock removal once you bought it?
I think the fellow before me did.
But
He was much more meticulous.
yeah, I need to find something to remove the rocks on mine. I've lost a couple of mower blades now, sheared off at the bolt, unfortunately. But I now know where most of the rocks are, but there's always one that's going to get you. Oh, there's some decent crop on there. It's like bunches of grapes.
I think these are a different tree, to be honest.
They don't look the same, do they?
That's some good crop there.
I wonder what that is. Obviously, it's come from a really big raceme, like a really long flower, and then set some really good nut. That's not A38 then?
No, but that's another dad out type tree.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean, like intermixed. There's varieties spotted all around for pollination, cross-pollination. And
Yeah. Which is good in a way. I mean, I was cursing the fact that, you know, I look at my mate Garth's orchard and he's got neat blocks of everything, but he's got, he can at least tell you what any row is or what, and that sort of stuff, and that's great. I'd love to know that as well, but there is some magic to having a big mixture in there. And I get the feeling that's what in future people are going to say is the best way to do it. So this is the far end.
Yeah, Eltham Road down there.
Right.
And so we're going to the very last row, right on the end.
But we're in Pierce's Creek, and honestly, Pierce's Creek has a hell of a lot of macadamia farms. I mean, just on Humpty Back Road, I would have counted 30 odd or 20 odd. I mean,
a whole heap, yeah, there's lots here. Eltham Valley's got a few.
I mean, if you listen to the Australian Macadamia Society, there are only 800 macadamia farmers in Australia.
Oh, that doesn't seem...
It doesn't seem right, does it? But maybe they're just counting their own members or something.
No, I imagine that's AMS members.
Yeah. Although, yeah, certainly in their publicity, they tell you there's 800 macadamia farmers in Australia. So I don't know about that. So is this it here? Is this...
This is the 268.
Right.
So it makes apples. They're huge
They're
nuts.
huge nuts.
There's
So
a couple there you can...
I'll put them up against my hand. Holy moly.
Yeah. And they have a dimpled shell.
I mean, I'd be happy with them if they were plums.
Oh, they're
Yeah.
good size, aren't they? But it doesn't
Not a heavy bearer though.
It only has a few kilos on it every year.
And here's its leaf pattern. It's a serrated, very long leaf. Genetically, it's an open pollinated spawn of 344, which is, I mean, this is nothing like a 344. It's meant to be a spreading variety, and it's got some out of season flower up there too.
Yeah.
But geez, they're good nuts. When roughly do they fall? Is it mid-season?
Yeah, they're a mid-season.
And you find yourself with this lot harvesting from when till when?
We go from, well, last year was a bit late, ordinarily March, till I've got a few rows of 849 down the bottom here. You can see the dimpled,
yes,
the dimpled shell,
and that's partly why they think there could be some tetraphylla in it, because Macadamia tetraphylla is rough nut.
Oh yeah, righto.
Golf ball dimples sort of thing. That's a massive nut.
It sure is.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You'd like to get a sample of those in.
Yeah, well, the kernel recovery is pretty good too, because I don't think the shell's that thick. So there's a lot of nut in them.
So we're still picking up some blocks in September.
Okay.
But that's those 8s.
849s.
816 and 849.
Right.
Just late stuff.
The 849's a good tree for you, is it?
Yeah, they're a good tree.
Yeah. I mean, I looked at planting some of them as gap fillers, but they take 8 years to crop. And you just think, oh, look, is it worth waiting that?
You can do a lot in 8 years.
Well, yeah. I mean, I've been planting MCT1s, which are meant to crop in 3, and some of these new varieties are meant to crop in 3 or 4. So there it goes. So you've got a sideways slope planting that I sort of have in bits of my farm, and this is a bit of a drainage channel down the middle.
Yeah, there still is grants from the local land services to put in V-draining. You can actually get some of your money back.
Really?
Yeah, I don't think it goes a long way on, you know, I think it was $1,500 or $2,000 or something. So it's better than a slap in the face. But so the fellow here before me put all drains all through the place. They just get a mid-mounted bladed grader.
Yep.
And he was a fellow who used to work for Agrimac, I think. I
Yeah.
don't know if he still does it.
Is the idea then that your harvester will fit either side of that V?
It's interesting. I think that the main objective was water movement.
Okay.
To stop the water flowing down the hill and control some of it and take it out of the orchard.
But come harvest time, do you find a bunch of nuts in there? You do.
So
How do you get them out?
Oh, you can sweep them out or
Oh,
roll
the
up and
sweeper.
down with the
Yep.
Toro harvester, but I can turn around. The sweeper can run up and down the middle. It's only a small little Toro
Right.
Rob Mac harvester.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Yep. And that's worked for you?
Yeah, that's a good little machine.
What do you think of their new one, which involves their own machine? You don't put it on a Toro. They've got their own machine
yeah,
now.
he had enough of Toro after years of doing it. He's a very smart engineer, Robert.
Right.
And he's removed all the belts
Right.
from the machine, so he's running on
Which are a
hydraulics.
curse.
Which
Yeah.
are, well, you get sticks caught in them and snapping belts and so on.
It's happened to my mower.
Yeah.
Yep.
So no, he makes a good machine, but they're for people that are on their own farm at optimum time and harvesting. It takes a little longer.
Yep.
But you are able to get a bit better control, but it might require a few more rotations.
Because of the width.
Yeah, just the width and the amount that it can carry, and
Yep. Before you dump it. Yeah.
but no, they're a good machine, and I actually take all my Toro stuff too, Robert, as opposed to going into town.
Oh.
I don't think much of the mob in town for Toro.
But he can service Toro
Robert
better.
knows Toro's backwards, so
Oh, that's interesting.
yeah.
Yeah. So you in addition to this is in addition to your own farm, provide services to a few other people.
Yeah.
And I've heard the consumer perspective, and as you know, I use contractors for a lot of my own services simply because I'm either not there or not competent. Last time I did the Macadamia show, Mark Duncan showed up unannounced, and so we got him in and started asking him questions, and he said, quote unquote, "Contractors are doing my head in." Now, I'm sure he didn't mean you specifically, but I think he was getting frustrated at giving recommendations for spraying or stuff to be done.
That get ignored.
Well, or didn't get done for 3 weeks or a month.
Yeah.
And there were Tails, and Garth was there, and he said, look, a couple of his farmers were, you could see macadamia weevils on the ground.
Yeah.
3 weeks after a spray had been recommended.
Yeah.
And of course, meanwhile, the weevils are eating everything. And I think Mark's theory was there were too many blow-ins like me from the city relying on services, and you guys were all too flat chat. It was too time sensitive, price sensitive, everything else. And the system was breaking down a bit in terms of quality control, but also getting people when you need them.
It is hard to get around when you need it. Spraying is particularly difficult.
Yeah, I mean, I've been pretty well served, luckily, for the most part, although having difficulty at the moment. But leaving that aside, spraying, harvesting.
Spraying spraying's probably the hardest because of the weather and the requirements as more and more of these properties become hobby farms with neighbours and spray drift and so on, and doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And because you only get a short window before the wind picks up, it is hard to do it.
And it seems like none of you are looking for new customers. You're all pretty much fully booked.
It's hard because the best farms are all already managed quite well.
Yeah.
And so you end up wasting your time working on these marginal
half serious farms.
A lot of time, a lot of effort for a lot of wear and tear on your machinery.
Right. And
so I'm extremely selective now about the farms that I'll work on. There's a couple up the road where I can drive the tractor up within sort of 10 minutes max.
Yeah. But supply and demand, when they're meant to be working as they're supposed to, you'd expect new businesses to be popping up and offering macadamia farm services. But are you seeing that? Are you hearing of new businesses opening? Or
no, not really. I don't think there is. I mean,
it's pretty stable.
Yeah, there's some pretty well-known contractors who do the right thing, and the machinery's not cheap to buy.
No.
So
the capital cost of starting that business is...
Capital cost of starting, and then without a contract for any period of time, you don't know where you'll end up the next year or the next job.
Or how many jobs you'll get.
It's like leasing a farm. You wouldn't lease a farm for anything less than 5 years.
Right. Because you've got to give it a go.
Well,
Or think a bit longer term.
you got to come to an agreement about what you're going to do to the farm to get it to start producing, and then by the time you've put in all that effort, and you might end up out the door again.
Yeah.
So
Now, are we near your A38s here?
there's some over here. Yeah.
Right. Interesting to see the style of tree.
There's the tall thing.
Right. That's very tall, isn't it? In terms of its relative to its width.
Yeah, it's thin. There's quite a few along this stretch here.
But look at the crop.
Oh yeah, it's great.
I don't know if the camera's picking this up, but I'm just pointing it up into the tree. There's nearly as many nuts as leaves up there.
Yeah. No, they're a good tree.
It's up close to the top of the canopy though. There's bits further down. There's a great crop on. Now they say one of the drawbacks of the A38 is husk spot.
Oh yeah.
Is it really?
Well, if you look at all the stick height, you'll see where the husk spot comes from.
'Cause that's where it spawns,
Yeah.
doesn't it? Yeah.
And even in the driest year, like last year when it was super dry and it hadn't rained for 6 months,
You still had husk
you
spot?
could still see live spores on the top of the.
What are you spraying for it? Or do you mix it up?
Yeah, no, every spray
You do something different.
do something different. So Cabrio we would have used this year.
Yeah.
Um,
I've used Cabrio once and then copper once.
yeah, we used copper at the end of the season.
I-
Last year we used something called Digger.
Right.
What did we use? What else did we use this year? Oh God, I can't remember. But yeah, there's a lot of stick tight after last year.
And you've been using the cards for
Yeah, we put out the wasps.
do you believe they work?
Yeah, I think they're pretty good for borer, but this year the fruit spotting bug's been
It's been a bigger problem, hasn't
a
it?
bigger problem than it has been in the past few years. So obviously the wasps aren't going to take care of them, but
No.
you know, I don't know, unless you had a seriously rampant fruit spotting bug problem, whether you're in fact using bulldog, overusing it to the point where it becomes,
Well, then mites flare up.
well, but then it's no benefit to you in the future because you've used it too much
Yeah.
to handle what may be only quite a small problem.
You used Trivor this year, didn't you?
Trivor, that was
because
the
we
one I
share
was
we share the same agronomist,
Yeah.
and he recommended Trivor. And did you get an okay result from that?
Yeah, I think so.
It seems like I did as well. What's this?
I have no idea. I just saw them. They look like ants.
They're spiders of some kind.
Yeah.
I wonder are they beneficial or harmful? I don't think there's any spiders that really attack macadamia nuts. Oh, look. There's a nest of some kind. Yeah, goodness knows what that is. Yeah, so no, it was my agronomist just saying, look, you might want to put on another spray of Trivor, but then the rain will wash it off a bit. There's always that sort of toss-up, isn't there?
That was, you were talking for fruit spotting bug?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. We did some bulldog. I don't know when we did that, but
You would have only done that recently.
yeah, I think so. Yeah. What did you use on lacebug this year? Mark recommended Transform for us, and
That's what we would have used.
bloody expensive.
Oh,
It was a
yeah.
really expensive bill, but it did wipe them out entirely. It was
And then the other one we used this year was Steward.
okay. Or is Stewart a wetter? No, gee, is this A38 too?
Yeah, they would be.
Slightly more spreading sort of tree, but yeah, it's a good crop on. So as a consumer of say contract services, is it more attractive to someone like you if a group of farmers get together and say, let's all use the one contractor in the one area?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Because presumably it makes the economic argument for you coming over there.
Logistically, it's much better.
Right.
Come over and spray 5,000 trees as opposed to 3 different farms all spread out for similar numbers.
Yeah. And is that how some of your clients do work?
I've got
if
two
you
that
like-
are next to each other.
Right.
Custodia was the first spray.
Oh, yeah.
Checking. But that's obviously a fungicide.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, it would be nice to get a bunch of farms next to each other like that.
And when you contract harvest, are you using the Rob Mac for that?
Yeah, we've got another one as well, so we go with two.
A bigger one?
No, just the same, but
Right.
and just knock it out quickly. Two people on two machines.
Are they better on difficult terrain
Yes.
than the big Carraros and...
Well, the Carrara is probably, in my opinion, probably the best one of all of them, to be honest.
Right.
Trival. Well, that would have been the second spray.
Yeah.
I'd have to go back and have a look. Personally, I think the Carrara is probably the best setup you can get. It's got the power. It has the ability on questionable terrain to handle it well.
And the new
Can
ones have...
carry a big load.
And the new ones have Kubota engines.
Do they?
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Which gets rid of the main disadvantage of a Carrara,
Yeah.
which is a Carraro engine.
Yeah.
But, no, mine's doing all right. And we managed to get the mulcher working this year and fix those problems that you found when you came over. And,
That was a hydraulic issue, wasn't it?
Not just a hydraulic issue, there were oil filters which had bits of metal in them from the engine.
Blew out.
Yeah, a band around one of the engines, which thankfully wasn't necessary. So the smart Carraro guy took a magnet to the engine and sucked out all the metal that remained within the engine and put it back together, and it seems really good. Yeah, it's strong.
Oh, they're a handy machine.
Yeah. And so what's, in terms of the long-term future of any orchard, I mean, I'm seeing a lot now, and I'm helping one or two people who are looking to buy farms. They're looking at old farms that are quite tall, overgrown. They haven't had their homework done like you've done on this place. I mean, and mine's the same thing. Are you a believer in height reduction pruning as a way of rehabilitating a farm, or are you do you prefer more radical measures like a replant or row removal?
No, I'm not sure. I don't think I've seen a few places that have taken the tops off and the trees have come back very well.
Right.
How they go in a serious storm, though, will be the real question.
Right. You mean chopped off at the hips?
Yeah.
Like at a certain height?
Yeah, taking the tops off.
Yeah.
So you've changed the structure of the tree.
Yeah,
So
clearly.
If you got a direct hit by a big storm, it'd be interesting to see.
Yeah.
But they're pretty hardy and resilient, as you can see from how they managed last year.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Do you believe some trees this year have had a holiday because of what they went through last year? That they're busy rebuilding energy? Is that why there's fewer nuts?
Some might be, but I think if you keep up the feed to them and have your pH correct and all your put down some soluble microbes to help take up all that P and K fertiliser, you should
be all right.
They just need to be able to make carbohydrates and so on. So,
what's your pH in this place?
Naturally it sits just above 5.
Yeah.
So it should be about 6.5 now. I have to go and test. I put out a ton of lime to the acre.
Right, and you're using ag lime?
Yeah, and I've used the prilled lime just for calcium.
Yeah.
At certain times of the year, I've just given that little bit of extra calcium.
Yeah. It's in my custom Eco Growth feed, a bunch more calcium, but I used Oscal this year because 2 tonnes a hectare of ag lime last year shifted the pH by 0.1. It's next to nothing. So hopefully Oscal, which is a much finer product in prills.
It gets in quicker.
It's
bloody expensive.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't use it pound for pound with ag lime.
I've used Oscal and Calcipril and ag lime. I mean, ag lime's much more economical.
Yeah.
But if it doesn't do anything, then
it's not really achieving its purpose.
The whole exercise is a waste of time.
Yeah.
But you've got a very high, fast turnover environment here.
Yeah.
You get 600 mils of rain, and the kind of growth you see in the grass and in the trees.
Well, you've got the same sort of flush I've got.
You've got to keep the inputs up.
Yeah. How do you check for mites? Like there's new flush there, and mites attack the new flush. So what are we looking for?
That's mite affected.
The fact that the leaves are
curling off and they're...
Okay, can you see mites?
Not with your naked eye. You need a
magnifying glass.
60-time magnifying.
Look, I grow
broad mites.
broad mites. Yeah.
Same thing.
I've been growing roses in Sydney for more than 20 years, and the two spotted mites, the spider mites, are the bane of my existence. But at least on a rose bush, you can douse them with oil.
Russets and broads are even harder to kill than your standard spotted.
Right. No one does an oil spray for them on Macas?
I'm not sure
I suppose
about
it'd be hard to cover the tree in oil, though, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Using an abamectin for mites if you have a real problem.
Yeah.
But as I say, a lot of the mites will get knocked off in a good rain event.
Okay.
So you're not going to kill them, and they're only focused on the flush.
Which we hope for. Yeah. And now the question on everyone's lips at the moment: what do you think is going to happen to the macadamia price this season?
I expect it to drop a little bit.
Yeah.
Years gone past, you had companies putting out prices in January.
Yeah,
They're trying to beat the market to get a price out. Now they're all
waiting for marquee.
They're all waiting for other people to put prices out.
Yeah. So you'd expect
I'd say
marquee to be the first?
$6.
Well, six was what they offered last year from marquee.
Okay, well,
and you're with Starman, and they had $6.20. That was, I think, the very top of the market. Pacific Farms was $6.05, I think.
I think Garth was doing $6.50, wasn't it?
Was he? At Wally's Nuts.
Garth, you'll have to bring in an answer.
Garth watches these.
I know he does.
Yeah. Yeah. No, look, my bet was $5.50. I think MWT, who I'm with, were giving me $5.80. I think last year.
Okay.
But their related farm services were something I needed at the time, and I had to say I'll let the farm go during January, and came back to grass that was 5 foot tall.
Yeah, that's all right.
So it's not happening this January.
Yeah,
I've got the place tamed now, but
the roots will be longer in the ground, and you'll get better water retention.
Yes, from a thicker coverage.
It'll break up the dirt a bit more,
and it's a bit more carbon.
Yep,
definitely.
So in a time like last year, where you had such a soil moisture problem, and you had hot sun day in day out cooking that ground, anything you could do to provide a barrier to keep that soil moisture is good.
Yeah.
And then when it does rain, if you've got deep roots breaking up the ground, you'll get water into the ground.
Yeah.
As opposed to just a hydrophobic environment where it runs off, aquaphobic.
Yeah. Now, Nick, you've been here since when?
We've been
on
here
this
about
farm?
6 years now.
Right. What's your take on the price of macadamia farms? Is it crazy? What's driving it, other than the price of macas?
This area has a lifestyle demand.
Yep.
Which is unparalleled. Byron Bay has a specific call to lots of people. So lifestyle demand around here is driving property prices up in general, and then the trees, in fact, to anybody aren't worth anything. You could bulldoze these and sell it for a horse property for exactly the same price as you could for
You really think that?
Yeah, absolutely. The trees are not worth. There is
I
a
don't know.
small
I mean,
advantage, right? If you had 10,000 trees, then you're a proper farm.
Yeah.
But having 1,500 mature trees is neither here nor there.
Yeah.
Especially when you've got to lay out all the capital to buy all the gear.
Yeah.
So for us, it works well. It pays the mortgage. It returns a little bit of tax benefit and some good cash flow. And
you can reuse the machinery to sell as services.
Yeah, well, we do a little bit of that stuff. It's not a major thing. And as I said, highly selective about who I do that for and what farm.
Yeah.
I've made the mistake in the past of working on crappy farms. It's just not worth doing.
Yeah.
But yeah,
so you think it's the lifestyle component primarily?
Well, for this area.
Yeah.
Being close to Byron Bay, and everyone wants to live up here. It's green.
Well, I've seen the prices in Byron Bay up 20%.
Ridiculous.
In the last 9 months or something like that, according to some of the property. But that's Byron proper. I just didn't know if it would automatically transfer to farms.
Well, say if you bulldoze these maca trees and did 25 acres of blueberries,
yep,
you're getting 15 times the return for your
on blueberries.
There's a hell of a lot more setup cost, netting and poles and irrigation and nutrient traps and all these sorts of things. But you have generally very reliable water in the vicinity of 1.5 metres a year.
It was over 2 last year.
Then you've got extremely deep dirt on this property. We've dug down sort of 6-7 metres and not found anything. So you've got very good dirt, east-facing block, tons of water.
Yep.
Good sun. You can grow anything here.
Well, there's people putting in custard apples. It doesn't seem like pecans are on the increase anymore?
No one's going to plant on a shoulder for pecans. They need
Dead
cold
flat.
hours. They need a certain amount of cold hours every year to produce flowers.
So they'll grow on the frosty
So
flats.
they grow in all the Lismore, Elephant Valley, Boat Harbour.
That's why we see
That's
them in
why
Eltham.
you see them in the
Yeah.
flats. They need 200 cold hours, I think, every year to produce flowers.
So they're an American tree. Yeah.
There's 180 varieties of them or something. It's a big,
Yeah.
and there'll be some symbiosis between the two. You know, if you had flat land, there's a farmer up the road, Rod Sproul, who works for Starman's, has pecans and macas.
Yep.
And he makes an ever so slight adjustment to his harvester. Instead of having a vertical auger to carry the nuts to the bins, he changes it for a bucket elevator.
Yep.
And so he uses his picking head to pick up his pecans. The bucket elevator lifts them up into the bin, and
He can do both.
do both.
What's making him more money?
Oh, the pecans are a bit more biannual,
Right.
and they suffer a bit from the water.
Okay.
So if you have a rain event when they're almost mature, you'll lose a lot in kernel recovery.
Right.
So it's still the macas are by far and away the best.
Best bet.
But if you had a good year for pecans, they're a similar price, so they have the potential to be similar returns.
Now, I heard that the local pecan farmers had a bit of a cheer when China banned American pecans.
Yeah.
But now the boot might be on the foot with China. But you never know what's going to happen with the world market for these things.
No, and being such a small percentage of the world nut market for macas is probably still, in one way, a benefit. There is still a huge amount of room for growth and market penetration.
Well, we're 2% of the world's nut market, aren't we?
Something very small.
It's very small. Yeah. There's some countries in Asia that haven't even heard of macadamias
No,
yet.
and you know, being an Australian brand, which is a very strong consumer brand for any product,
Yep.
diversified product range now with shampoos and hair creams, hand creams, cereals, all this stuff.
Lip balms.
Yeah, so there's a lot of future for them.
Yep. I've got one brother who's made friands out of macadamia meal instead of almond meal. They taste fabulous, but if you had to pay retail price...
So you mean he got mates rates?
Well, he went and picked up a sack of mine for free, but there'd be $12 a friand if you actually had to use it. So there is a price barrier to people using macadamias, but it's a price barrier that benefits us, I suppose.
There'll be more and more choice in the macadamia price range in the future with more crops coming online. You'll see lower end nuts in going some way to feeding that market that want that lower price point.
Do you think we'll ever see imports?
Here?
Yeah.
I don't think so. I hope
What about at that premium end where they want whole nuts? I know that some varieties, like these A38s, have a large percentage of whole nuts, but you and I are never paid a bonus for those. Why not? They like high kernel recovery, and they reward you for the high percentage of kernel, but they don't reward you for giving them whole nuts. And there's some varieties, like, A38's a good one. 849's a good one. But A16, A4, those ones, there's just no bonus for whole kernels. And
our reports do talk about whole kernels.
yeah, they'll tell you what percent whole kernels
I'd have to look at the contract to tell you whether or not there was any
bonus for them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't seen the Starman's contract, but no contract I've seen actually has a bonus for whole kernel. And I wondered about that because, you've got these 4 new varieties. They say MCT1 is about 50% whole kernel, which is okay. R is about 60%. But one of the new ones, J, is only about 30% whole kernel.
Yeah, right.
They're big nuts, but they break. So I just wondered whether that might be a factor in the future for some of this stuff. Anyway, do you want to show us your beast up here? Does blue mean New Holland?
No, that's a Landini.
Oh, Landini,
Yeah.
Italian.
Yeah, they're a good machine.
Are they serviced in Lismore somewhere?
Yeah. By that company I mentioned earlier, who I'm not real.
Oh, who you're not real friends with?
Well,
So
Polaris, Toro, and Landini, and I've got all 3.
Oh,
I
right.
try and avoid them like the plague. To be honest.
And
All your listeners will know who I'm talking about.
Okay, no, fair enough. But Landini's
Italian.
It's Italian. Do you have to get parts from?
Well, they'll stock certain parts, but yeah, quite often it's through Inlon, who's a Toowoomba base. Toowoomba. There's a distributor for the parts in the country.
Right.
It's not too hard to get them.
If you had to buy a tractor now and you had a choice of any brand and you were buying new, what would you buy?
Well, there's obviously price point differences, but
Yeah.
I personally think the John Deeres are the best tractor.
Really?
Yep.
They've got a new dealership in Lismore now.
Chesterfields, yeah.
They were with Ongmac, and then
Yeah.
one gave the other the heave-ho, I don't know.
Ongmac lost it.
Right. And they've gone totally Kubota.
It's a reasonably good machine.
Yep. How many horses this?
95 horsepower.
So it looked like 100. Yeah,
It'd be
yeah.
nice to have a little bit more.
And there's a mulcher on it now.
Yeah.
Is that what you use for spraying?
I use this for spraying, yes. It's
Right.
It's the best part of 6 tonnes.
Okay.
So it's got plenty of weight for any slopey stuff.
Right. And is there a low enough centre of gravity on these machines to do slopes?
Yeah.
Or does it worry you?
No. If you are working on any farm that has any slope,
Yeah.
you need to just think about how full your spray unit is.
Okay.
So you might go and do the flat areas and exhaust half the tank, so by the time you come across the slopey side slopes, your biggest problem.
Yeah.
By the time you come across anything with side slope, you're half empty,
Yeah.
putting a lot less pressure. Up
So
and
you
down,
have-
slope up and down, straight up and down the hills, no problem. That's easy.
I find that with most of my, even with the mowing, straight up and down isn't so
No,
bad.
it's easy.
But the slope,
Side slopes.
I've got the strongest hips in Rosebank.
Yeah.
Yep. I always writing myself on the
Yeah.
in the thing. Yeah. No, that's great. Well, Nick, thank you for a tour of your
That's all right,
farm.
no
It
problem.
truly is a lovely place, and I'm quite envious of it, I have to say, to have such perfectly heighted trees with no gaps in the ground cover, crop everywhere.
There was quite a
I-
period of neglect.
Yeah.
Hence the lack of height. So for sometimes before about 8 years ago, I think there was quite a period where there was zero nourishment put in.
But isn't all that did then surely was just delay the honeymoon? So now
Probably.
you're in the honeymoon.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and you're in this sweet spot. You know, it's a great
No, they're coming good now.
great place to be. And I wish, like me, I wish you knew more about which ones you actually had. But to see some of your varieties that I don't have is an absolute education, and I'm grateful for it.
No problem.
Right, so I'm going to sign off. Goodbye from me. Goodbye from Nick Savage.
Cheers, guys.
And we'll catch you again soon. Bye bye.